All right, so this is the first content video. Psych. And I'll be discussing Sarah Moss's first part book of her series, which is the Court of Thorn and Roses. This book was honestly really good. It really kept my attention. I usually read, so let me grab it. On a Kindle. Partially because I live in a small, confined space. I don't have a lot of room to store books, unfortunately. I also find sometimes books can be a little intimidating, especially with ADHD. Like, if I see a book and it's like this thick, and I'm only 10% of the way through it, I give up. So it's kind of a nice way to kind of read books without having the obligation of having to store them. Or worry, I love books. I can get lost in them. If I had the physical copy of this book, I would probably be, sniffing it like a drug addict or something, because I love the smell of books. I love feeling, the pages, in my hands. And it definitely helps kind of with the immersion into the book. So yeah, I mainly use, my Kindle. Come on, open. Sorry. So we're going to be going over A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like I said, this book was really good. It helped keep my attention. I have not read beyond this book yet, so if you've read beyond this, keep spoilers to yourself. If you're going to make any comments or discussions below in the comment section. I really did feel like it was a really good book. I've been meaning to get back into reading for a really long time, especially with fiction novels, not really cut and dry philosophical or, material type, readings, for high school and college that I typically be reading. Yeah, it was really good. I really loved the, development of all the characters, really. I did feel like Feyre and Tamlin were very complete characters, at least for this first part of this book. It definitely reminded me of almost Beauty and the Beast, as well as Eros and Psyche, and almost a little bit Rumpelstiltskin as well, with the challenges of this book, as well as the actions that take place and the events that take place in this book. If you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend it. It was a solid read. I actually read it within 2 days. when I found the chance to. So that's pretty rare for me to actually get through a book that quickly. For it to grasp my attention for that long is actually really good. So I guess let's talk about the main character first, Feyre. I actually really liked her. I personally just don't like damsels, at least for, I think it's a little too cliche when it's someone who, similarly in Beauty and the Beast, where it's someone who can't help themselves, who just kind of stuck no matter what, or it's kind of self-imposed, they have to stay no matter what kind of thing. So I definitely liked Feyre in that she was, kind of the provider for her family, and that she was very capable, very capable. Even though her family originally had a very high class living and standards, she didn't really get to enjoy or indulge in that very much. Once her father's I guess I should say, spoilers ahead first. Sorry. So, give yourself some, 5 seconds to, either get out of this video or continue watching. We're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Okay, back onto the story. When her father's investments in business fail, and he's beaten, terribly, mangled. He's now a cripple, basically, and just a shadow of what he once was as a man, and as a provider for the family. And her 2 sisters, who still kind of indulge in this extravagant-ish lifestyle by their neediness and demandingness of Feyre. So there's Nesta, and Elaine, I think was their names. Let me just make sure of that. Nesta. Sorry. For some reason I had Hestia in my mind. I'm like, no, that's not right. And, because she's basically tasked with these really hard, providing roles, even though she's the youngest of her siblings, she still does them without complaint, even though she, obviously would love to. And she's got a good head on her shoulders. She knows that her sisters still kind of live this kind of extravagant lifestyle where, they want things and, are demanding and won't lift a finger to help around the house. So she knows ways of basically placating them, but enough to kind of keep the family afloat. And, she suffers a lot of consequences for her actions in the beginning of the book. Once again, spoilers ahead, she kills a high fae that was transformed into a wolf. And she kind of knew, based off of its obscene size, that it was more than just a regular wolf that you'd see in the wild. And eventually a creature that's a chimera, that's a mix of a deer and a bear, and is just honestly fairy-like itself, comes after her, demanding some form of justice for this high fae that was basically this creature's friend. And this creature turns out to be actually another high fae, but is a high lord, and can transform, into this creature. And he goes by the name of Tamlin. Really interesting character. He basically brings, similar to the Beauty and the Beast or Psyche and Eros story, brings her to the land of the Fae as, a form of, restorative justice for the life that she took from his friend who had gone out as a sentinel outside of the fairylands. And he, he has tendencies that are a little bit, he's very charming, obviously. Very, pretty sharp tongue. Maybe not as much as Lucien, who's another fairy living in this court, in the spring court. And, doesn't treat her with any, malintent. Everything that she's been led to believe, she does have some prejudice against fairies in the Fae. Just because, humans and Fae have been warring for, and at odds for 500 or so odd years. And, he corrects a lot of those biases and misunderstandings and, at least because he's not prejudiced towards humans. His family was. And also, myths iron is something fairies hate and they're weak against it. Well, that was a lie. Or don't eat fairy food, in the land of the Fae, otherwise they can control you. Kind of reminded me of the Hades and Persephone myth. If you eat the fruit of hell, the food of hell, you'll be stuck there. Kind of similar to that. So So like another nod to mythology. And I thought it was really interesting that throughout the story, he's trying to help coax her into trusting him. He does protect her quite a bit, but not necessarily because she's incapable. She's actually quite capable. It's just the lands of the Feyre are very hostile, due to, other, factions of the Feyre races that are, there's good and evil, just similar to humans, but they're pretty malicious towards humans. And so you find out that there's this curse on like these lands and the people living there in the Spring Court, as well as on Tamlin. You don't really get, like, and you find this out later. Originally, he calls it like a blight, but he doesn't really divulge much about it. And then you learn that there's actually a curse involved. Feyre slowly learns about this curse, from tricklings of words and utterances from everybody else. And, because she's very smart, she just picks up on these things. She even goes out of her way to meet some really nasty fairies, and trap what was it? I'm trying to remember. What was it called? Oh, I can't remember. I'm spacing what type of fairy it was, but she basically ensnares this kind of fairy that you wouldn't really want to cross paths with, and learns a little bit more as the story progresses. And basically this fairy, tells her, like, you need to stay with the High Lord. He'll protect you. Things will solve themselves. Things will solve itself, if you stay with him. So just stay with him. Rather than trying to run away like you have, or, trying to get back to your family like you have. And so as the story goes on, she slowly starts losing these biases because he's, always there. And, she finds more, because she's so immersed in this world, she has to, acclimate and become kind of part of it. And she starts falling in love with Tamlin, who, she gets kind of jealous during a celebration where he has to partake in a ritual that's kind of explicit in nature. And which was interesting. And he clearly shows interest at the same time. She had snuck down to this festival when she was told not to. Big no-no. And he actually had smelt her and, like, tried finding her and was really upset when he didn't. So you can definitely kind of see that kind of shift from you're just here to be here, and, the more relationship side of it. Eventually, with the relation of the curse, she figures out that the one behind it is this malicious kind of, almost like a queen of the land. Like, there's lords for these courts, but the person who is controlling them is Amarantha. And she's basically like this evil, like, general of the original king, who's in what was it called? What was the other land called? Starts with a B. Oh, I don't remember. I'm spacing it. It's a little late for me. And she's basically taking over this land that she was supposed to claim for her king, and has been controlling these high elves, these high lord elves of these courts for 40 plus years. And she had basically placed this curse on Tamlin because she fancied him, and was like, you should be my partner and we can rule this land together. And he was not about that. He was not interested. He even told her, I would rather bed and wed a human before being with you. And so she put a curse on him and his court, through the ruse of, a celebration that she was hosting. And this curse can be identified by all the masks that all these fairies have to wear. Tamlin wears one. It's like an emerald and gold mask that he can never take off, and none of the other fairies in the Spring Court can take off their masks either. It's just an identifier that they've been cursed. And you find out that this curse, the reason why Amarantha placed it on him, because she's human hating. She hates humans, absolutely. Her sister had fallen in love with a human, much to her chagrin, and he betrayed her sister and basically murdered her. Yeah, heavy stuff. So she ended up, finding that human and, did her own, nasty stuff to him. And so she's just not fond of humans, period. And so when Tamlin told her that, she, obviously was not happy. That she came, as a last choice. She'd be like, unless like the whole fairy race had been obliterated, as well as humans. As long as the whole fairy race was obliterated, he would always choose a human before her. And so basically the curse entailed that you need to find a human woman who will fall in love with you, but she must be someone who is very prejudiced against our kind and is even willing to kill our kind. And she has to fall in love with you. And she has to say, I love you. After, I think it was like, in the quote, it was like 7 by 7 years. So 49 years. Within 49 years, you need to get a woman to say that. And, a human woman to say that to you. And so that's partially what invited Feyre into being brought to this land. In fact, the wolf that she hunted was a fairy turned into a wolf by Tamlin, and he intentionally actually let himself basically be killed by her to spark the events of lifting this curse, because they were fast approaching the deadline for it, and it would mean the enslavement of all the fairies to Amarantha. And so you find that out, and that was really, really interesting, like an interesting power play. The fact that this fairy had given up his life basically to incite all these events, to make sure that Tamlin and the rest of the fairies of the Spring Court were freed. And so, this is what's found out. And like, you don't find this out much later, but she finds out about this curse and about this Amarantha, like, and this is someone who strikes fear in everybody, including Tamlin and Lucien. Even the mention of her name, before you really learn about her, she's kind of spoken in hushed whispers as she. And so, like, there's no designation for her originally, like, no name was given. And you find out that she's been the one who's been inciting attacks in the human world, and basically also causing this blight by allowing these evil fairies to basically go around and, kill off people, and, this blight to kill off children, and, reign supreme in this world, where, Fey children are really hard to come by. So they're as precious as gold. So, she killed off, what was it, like 20 children in the book with this blight. So she's a real nasty character. Like, she has no care or regard for anyone around her, not even her own kind, she has no sympathy or empathy for them. And then, she is discovered, Feyre is discovered, as being, the curse breaker, essentially, by other Fae, such as Rhysand. And basically, Tamlin has to send her back home because he fears what Amarantha will do to her if she finds out about her. So, he sends her back home, and he's taking care of her family for her, providing them with wealth and, among other things. And before he sends her away, 3 days before this curse is supposed to be finalized, essentially, he keeps saying, "I love you," and she never returns it. I'm going to skip the whole coming back to home part just because I think it's a little bit, it's very Beauty and the Beast. Essentially, like, it's the same kind of story. Like, she goes back home, her family greets her, all of them are happy for her to be home. I mean, aside from Nesta, who, was suspecting what's going on. Like, she wasn't able to be charmed, essentially, into believing what was going on with her and why she was missing. And so, Feyre still has these inklings of dread about Tamlin being basically taken and tortured by this Amarantha. And so she decides to go back, essentially, where she, discovers the whole spring court in ruin. And with the help of Alice, one of the maids of the spring court, manages to go under the mountain, which is basically like Amarantha's own court and her own fortress. And when she gets there, she makes a declaration of love for Tamlin, who's basically stone cold. Like, he's trying to just detach himself from the situation, not expressing emotion, or at least trying to hide his emotion, because Amarantha is looking for a reaction from him, essentially. Amarantha essentially challenges Feyre to 3 challenges in a riddle. And these challenges are, done once a month, essentially. And there's other little things that she has to do in between them, that are really test one's patience and sanity. Which, Feyre accepts under the conditions that, Tamlin be set free and they're able to go on their merry way. She completes these 3 tasks with success, with challenges, of course. With the third one being that she has to kill off 3 Fae, high Fae, of which the first 2 she is successful. And then with the final one, it's actually Tamlin. Because they've had hoods put over their head to hide their identities until they're revealed. And so, Amarantha is basically trying to really test Feyre. Like, if you really love him, like, you'll either have to kill him, and you don't get him, you free him, essentially, in your own way. Or, you don't kill him and I get to kill you, and then you don't get him. So really vindictive. Like, she's playing a really dangerous game here. And Tamlin is, hinting at, like, hey, just, kill me. And Feyre realizes that he has always been hinting at this for the entire time that she has been in his court. People like Lucien and Rhysand would talk about his, stone heart, essentially. So she realizes that's actually, a conjunction of, like, a condition of the curse, that she wasn't able to learn about. Like, no one could tell her about it. Everyone who was under this curse, I guess their heart was turned to stone, like physically turned to stone. And so, she successfully, stabs Tamlin, and he's, obviously injured. But Amarantha is furious, that she was able to succeed in completing these 3 tasks. And so she refuses, as the sore loser that she is, to release Tamlin in the courts and to go on her merry way. And so, Feyre comes to an agreement, with her, if I solve your riddle, will you do it unconditionally? Will you just immediately let them go? And Amarantha agrees and sets out on torturing Feyre as she's, coming to the conclusion on what this riddle is about. Let me just pull up that riddle real quick. Because I thought it was a really good riddle. Like, I already knew what it was when I read it. Like, I'm like, oh, I know what this is. So the riddle states, there are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet. And those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. I instantly knew what it meant. When I read that, I was like, oh. I kind of love riddles like that, so, and yes, I do solve them in Starbucks whenever I see them. But as, Feyre is being tortured by Amarantha, with her dying breath, she whispers, it's love. And instantaneously, the court, the high court elves, all the lords are freed. All the masks fall off the spring court fae, and Tamlin is given all of his original powers back. And he, in a fit of rage, seeing Feyre killed, brutally murders Amarantha swiftly, like doesn't mess around. So at the conclusion of this book, the High Fae all decide to basically bless Feyre with, basically to become a high elf. Like, it's the only way to really save her and bring her back to life. And so she is. And so they, like, the last part of the book is them leaving under the mountain and going back to the spring court. So, like I said, it really kept my attention, this book. I thought the ending was really interesting. Of course, there was some other smaller, minute tasks that were very kind of Rumpelstiltskin-y. And like almost 12 Dancing Princesses kind of style. And there was like a part that reminded me of a Nox on a Moon from The Mummy. So there's some influences there. Oh, sorry about that. That's my dryer. Small enclosed space. Yay, apartments. But it really did capture my attention really well. I finished the book in like 2 days. But I really did love the book. I'm a little worried about moving on to the next books because I've read some comments where there's this idea that she moves on to a new partner and that Tamlin is like viewed as evil. And I'm like, ooh, what's gonna happen in the next books? So I'm not a huge fan of like love triangles. So I'm just like, please don't be a love triangle. Please don't be a love triangle. Hopefully it's like a break from Tamlin to somebody else. I think from what I've heard, it's actually she goes to Rhysand. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's what it is though. Which I'm a little sketched out given his actions in this first book. I'm like, he's definitely a bit of a manipulator. Like, he definitely does try to help. Like, he's sincere in his helping, but it does come across as a little weird. Like, because at the end of the book, he's like, I just wanted to be the person who wasn't sitting by, and letting things happen. I had to do things passively. So I'm like, I can kind of respect that motive. but at the same time, like the way that his methods were just a little sketchy. So we'll see where I go on with the books on that. Like I said, I'm a little worried. I'm like, oh no. So don't spoil it for me. Please don't. I want to catch my surprises as I read. But what did you guys think? Like, you know, what were your favorite parts of the book? You know, what were things that you probably want changed, I guess? You know, I'd love to see some open discussion down in the comments. I definitely I really like this book. I kind of want to do a cosplay from it. I think it would be really fun. I love, like, you know, fairy tales. I love, you know, mythos. So I think it'd be really fun to kind of cosplay one of these characters. Of course, I have to get like a wig or something, you know. Blue hair is not exactly in the book. But yeah, I think that'd be really fun. What do you guys think? Do you think I should cosplay like Feyre or something? Or what do you think? Do you think it'd work? Let me know. But yeah, I can't wait to read the next book. So, peace.